So, dear and respected friend, thank you so much. And first of all, wish you a very happy Mother's Day. I'm extremely overwhelmed to get this opportunity to address you all this auspicious day of the book of poem launch ceremony, Professor Ananta Giri's Alphabet of Creation, Taking God to Bed. I welcome Professor Ananta Giri, Dr. Janal Singh Anand, Professor Meera Chakravarti, Dr. John Taklamer, Professor Paul, Professor Shah, Susri Appa, Minti Pradhanji, and I can see so many important friends present here, Professor Gyan Gului, and all the respected friends, viewers both on Facebook platform and Zoom platform. Today is a Mother's Day, so I can recall a very important poet, feminist, great writer, Julia Ward Howe. She was a great inspiring soul, and she issued the first Mother's Day proclamation in 1870. And Mother's Day actually started as a call for women to organize world peace. And originally, Mother's Day was an anti-war protest. So today is very relevant day because the kind of legitimate crisis and the Ukraine-Russia war is going on. So the whole divine idea of motherhood can be remembered in that context. And alphabets of creation is also, as Professor Saltus beautifully articulated, that alphabet of creation is a part of a long and eloquent articulation of pattern through which that the process is furthered. And one of its first stages being the act of communal transformation of world of here and now towards peace, not war, through love, not hate. So I think there is a kind of coherence of philosophy with Women's Mother's Day and alphabets of creation. And the word meaning of Ananta itself, very unique. Ananta means endless being. And all of us are Ananta. As Rabindranath Tagore writes, every person is worthy of an infinite wealth of love. The beauty of his soul knows no limit. So today we are going to talk about alphabets of wisdom, alphabets of creation. So first, I invite all our friends, and before inviting guests, let me also give a kind of brief introduction to our Swadhyay Sahachakra. Swadhyay Sahachakra is a co-learning circle of self and mutual study. It is an initiative of studying and learning together self, culture, societies, and the world. Friends associated with this are eager to walk and mediate with new horizons of thinking and new movements of social and cultural change at work in our contemporary world. We study seekers such as Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Chittaranjan Das, a creative soul, creative thinker from Orissa, and many others around the world. We present our own writings and reflect upon our creativity together. We also invite seekers from different fields of life to share with us their life's vision, sadhana, and struggles for creating a world of beauty, dignity, and dialogue. So this is our first book launch ceremony. So we congratulate Professor Ananta Giri for writing a deep philosophical collection of poems So first, I would like to invite Dr. Janal Singh Anand sir to share his thoughts on uh, this particular book. So let me give a brief introduction to Dr. Janal Singh of Dr. Janal Singh Anand. Although Dr. Janal Singh Anand does not need any introduction, he's a chairman of Azad Foundation and he's a professor emeritus in Indian literature and author of more than 120 books of fictions, non-fictions, poetry, spirituality, and philosophy. Dr. Maja Harkum regards Dr. Anand as one of the greatest philosophers among the poets and one of the greatest poets among the philosophers. And he has just published a book called Lustrous, which mass appeal has surprised critics. So first, I would like to invite Dr. Janal Singh Anand sir to share his thought, his ideas about alphabets of creation. Sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Randhir Gautamji. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So first of all, I extend my thanks to your organization, which is busy in social transformation through spirituality. It is an admirable task and our society needs it. And I look at Professor Ananta Giri's book also in the same tradition. And really, I must congratulate him for this work, which I consider an epical work. And while reading it, it is so much, it's wide scoped that it's very difficult to grapple the variety of ideas, the depth, the flight, intensity, everything. So I would say it is a privilege to comment on a phenomenal work by a phenomenal poet. Dr. Ananta Giri, as his name suggests, leaves his body behind and surges in the winds of creation on the wings of his imagination. The work, its very conception, its spaces, its spectacle, and its restless space. What I see in this book is some sort of restlessness of spirit. Its restless space make one wonder. We are reading some modern epic. Poems, though separated in space, in time, yet erupt from the same consciousness and carry the stamp of the poet. What is that stamp? Limitless knowledge, limitless gaze, limitless in their power to communicate and impress. Alphabets of Creation is a philosophical work, monumental in its intent and fabulous in its reach. Poetry is not a few lines scribbled on paper. It has a long journey. A poem is like the Ganges, which erupts from Shiva's hair and moves along hills and plains, carrying with it the silt of human thought and action. Forward to the ocean, poetry is immortal like the Ganges itself. It works at 4 levels of perception. This is how I look at it. First of all, poetry appears in an abstract form in the mind of the poet. Before you put it on the paper, It is in the mind of the poet. Then it takes the shape of words. It lies trapped in words till it is awakened by the reader. The reader awakens those words. Words like tablets. When we take medicine, we take tablets. Words like tablets enter our bloodstream, and after they are processed in our stomach, the juice runs to our head, and then we feel its impact. So in this way, a poem, first of all, affects the creator, gets itself written, lies dormant in the paper, and when resurrected by a reader, it enters his body, gets processed again, and rises to his head, and then it is seen in his speech and in his actions. Because after reading a great poem, you are never the same as before. I felt all this while reading through this book by Dr. Ananta Giri. In his hands, words come to life and start addressing you and responding like actors in a drama, engaged in an eternal dialogue within themselves. The book is too diffused, too spectacular to be condensed into a single breath of reading or even commenting. I think it needs time to be picked up at will and chewed upon by and by as this work of enormous power, unparalleled breadth, and unmatched depth is imbued with a great vision of oneness, love, understanding, and most important is a shared vision of life experience. The opening verse announces his intense passion to explore the idea of creation and what, according to him, controls the creator's creation. Creator's creation. The poet has provided an earthly pedestal to each of his poems. This, I think, very unique thing. His interceptions, after every poem, he intercepts us. His interceptions, he doesn't interrupt. His interceptions bring us to the consciousness that poetry has a literaria biographia. This is a word which I coined because we know about biographia literaria. But I think every piece of writing has a literaria biographia also, and this I see enacted in real life in this book of poems. Here, when Dr. Giri has put at the end of each poem how and when he wrote the poem and for whom, it is like stringing a kite to the earth. If poems are kites flying in the sky, these earthialities, I would call it earthialities, provide them a string to from where the poem originates. His poem, A Different Color of Consciousness, provides a prismatic view of human action and thought, whose colors form the rainbows in the skies. The journeyless journey declares that the poet is not after knowledge which becomes a burden with mankind, as it has now become. And we are unable to process it. This is our tragedy. Perhaps God knew it, that knowledge can create problems for us. That is why he just stopped our ancestors from eating the apple fruit. But Dr. Giri loves the knowledge of the ultimate truth. I seek to dance with history and eternity. History is our past, eternity is our future. So I seek to dance with history and eternity, self, society, and beyond. When we think of knowledge, we should not forget that knowledge which forces the mind on senses. There is a knowledge which forces the mind on senses. Look at the universities. What are they teaching now? They are forcing our mind on our needs, our body, our senses. So knowledge which forces the mind on our senses is infernal. Knowledge which forces the mind on our senses is infernal, and knowledge which releases. Professor Giri, I think, strikes here. The knowledge which releases is divine. The knowledge which releases is divine. The poet talks of co-realization, which means, this is a very important word which I am mentioning, because it will come again and again in his poetry. Co-realization, which means life being a shared expression in words, in which words are bridges which connect various streams and their meanings flow in different directions like river waters. Our co-walking, he dreams of. He doesn't dream of a self isolated from society. He thinks of co-walking. Our co-walking as a passage for a new revelation, meditative verbs of co-realizations. Time and again, he is talking of the word co. Dr. Giri's poem, Hermeneutics Beyond Fixed Locations and Rivers of Co-realizations, appears to be a seminal creation, which underlines his faith that the search for ultimate reality, though rooted in different parts of the world, the movements, appeared from Athens, Greece, and Varanasi. And though it represents a Brahmanic and Brahmanics, is essentially a rooted march. It is a rooted march into the cave of ultimate realization, an experience which words help us to co-realize. He looked at hermeneutics as a new path of prayer for germination of a new faith, which is all enveloping and which transcends linguistic divisions and which talks of revelation. In his poem, Writing Culture, Writing Beings, the poet has an obsessive feeling that writing is not only playing with words. I liked this poem a lot. Poetry is not playing with words or simply for enjoyment. It has a deeper meaning, and the culture of writing deals not with mere pleasure or entertainment. It goes deeper to address man's being. Very important. He says, like a sculptor, the poet throws off the unnecessary things, the extra away, and then it is offered to the fire. Just see the imagery when some gold ornament is, being made. Offering it to the fire, making of jewels. Jewels of thinking and being. The focus of Dr. Ananta Giri never strays. It is always on intellectuality, thinking, and being. Very important. Writing opens up man's being. and he craves for the dance of the spiritual in his writing. All these activities point towards co-realization, which emerges as a central theme of Giri's work. Co-realization of potential strikes again in his poem Yearning for the Performative. Performative is also an important word. Sometimes we think that poets who read poetry perform on the stage. So, performative, it has a very larger meaning. Underlining his yearning for transcendence into realms where differences cease and men turn into elements, from stillness to movement and from movement towards a new mirroring. It is a passion sublime, a yearning for reaching out, for blending with the outer cosmos. Poet also shows up political consciousness in some of his poems. He comments on Gandhi's comment on parliament as a sterile woman and wants that instead of a fighting plane, parliament should be transformed into a place of intimate dialogue and understanding. Further, he says that the state should acquire a spiritual orientation which leads to a festival of co-realizations through evolution of consciousness. Now, these are very, I think it is a very tall agenda for a society which is rooted in shallowness and hatred also. But I would like to point out here that when he talks of that parliament should be a place of intimate dialogue and understanding, personally, I think that parliament should, our idea of democracy needs to be rethought, because the way it is working now, it is not at all working now. The idea of opposition, if people are doing something, why there is opposition? And there are some people in the government and there are some who are not in the government and they are being paid for just opposing the government. It is a non-productive work. We need to think over these things, and I agree with Dr. Giri that it is an emotional appeal that parliament should be a festival of co-realization. We should be able to realize our shared dreams and evolution of consciousness. Great, great thought. So he is in search of a new humanity and a new divinity also. And he questions the concentration camps with love, kissing with purity, a new birth, co-birthing a new humanity, a new divinity. This is what the poet is after. It is then we see that there is a poem, O Cosmic Light. I think in this poem, he takes us very deep into his consciousness, the way he thinks, the way he perceives things. O Cosmic Light, O Parama Brahma, O Parama Yoga, O Parama Tantra, O Parama Sukha. And then he says the last word, I think, which is very important, and that is Antara Prema. He concludes it at Antara Prema, and this needs to be defined. Is it self-love or it is a love which is selfless? In this way, we see a cosmic consciousness that is growing. And just look at his poem, The Mango Tree of Peace. This makes you smile also, the way he puts it. He says, I have planted flags of India and Pakistan on the one surviving mango tree. If you have read this poem, it made me think, and I had a laugh also, because it has, something which is impossible. Impossible things are, but a poet is a poet. He's a dreamer also. I have planted flags of India and Pakistan on the one surviving mango tree. And it is a magic tree of love and dreams. Dr. Ananta Giri, you have used the word magic. So it is possible only with some sort of magic, whether it is the words of the poet or people are, transformed into what we have said, festival of co-realizations. A tree of peace for Pakistan, India, and the world. The poet, he thinks in, his own ways. There is another poem, Apostle of Years. He sees a progression. People are going and he stops them. And he asks them, why don't you listen? Why don't you cry? Oh, see, if there is a progression of people, they are very serious, very sad, and if they don't cry, he asks, where are your tears? Where are your ears? One thing he doesn't mention, I think, here, maybe deliberately, and it rhymes with tears and ears also. It could have been fierce. From here, he moves over to Ananda. Anand. Anand is a state of, is it a state of pure joy? If we ask Dr. Ananta Giri, I think he will say, he looks at life as a dance because the world is moving, circling, it is a whirl already. So to be in dance is to be in most natural form. My revolution becomes a dance with and beyond suffering and joy. Beyond suffering and joy, beyond dukh and anand. So when he looks at anand, he doesn't leave suffering behind. In his consciousness, both things are together. As I have said earlier, he has used the word performative. I think this is very important. He thinks of his ideas in practice, ideas and practice, the practical and the poetic, working and meditating with a new performative as the embrace of transcendence and immanence, a movement of immanence, a flow of immanence in ideas and practice. So he is, talking of performance, performing something, not only writing, not only preaching, but I think he thinks of the poet in the active mode, in the active mode. So the poet wants a new symphony of transformation. What type of a transformation he wants, which is beyond humans. For him, a woman is not only a body, but a dance of nature, human and divine, a melody of cosmos. Truth and God, he thinks, are checks. Truth and God are checks challenging us to realize our limitations. Equally interesting and far-reaching are his views on translation. Translation makes me reborn. We are creating something new when we are translating. As a new composition of commons, a new birth of co-realization, and a new rainbow of evolution. Evolution is translation. It is important to give attention to the poet's clarion call for all the stories. This is a very important job which he is doing. To change the narrative of the stories told till now. it is important to give attention to the poet's clarion call for all the stories which have ruled human imagination and all the storytellers. He wants them to evolve into a new Vishwanida, a new Vishwa, Jamaat of love. Jamaat means brotherhood, class of love, labor, fasting, feasting, and learning. And he says, truth will make us free, love will make us free, but not without sadhana. Sadhana will make us free, and struggle will make us free. If we want freedom, we need all these combination. The poet wants to redraw the terms of human understanding to impart to mankind a new grammar of action and thought. And what has impressed me is his expression, the new ecology of the mind, body, and soul. This is what he uses. And here we find the image of a cosmic dance, a flowing body, mind, and soul, not static. A flowing body, mind, and soul, singing spirit, dancing soil, wings of bird and light. So this type we see he believes in a cosmic philosophy. Then the book's part 2, Going to Bed with God, we come across poet's restless seeking the balm of restlessness in seeking the balm of peace. He wants to transcend all ideologies and thinking patterns which believe in either or. We just ordinarily think in terms of either or, and which are cast in contradictions. He believes that peace will come with realization and harmonious dance. Not like this, if we say science versus spirituality. This is how people look at things. There are so many people discussing science versus spirituality. But man is neither science alone nor spirit alone. To comprehend him in totality, we need, Dr. Ananta Giri says, we need two things. One is neurobiology and socio-spirituality. Very unique, contribution to thought on this issue. So there is a lot more which can be said about this work. As I've already said, the more time you give to the study of this magnum opus, the more layers of meaning will be revealed. I consider this great work a process, a progression, and a sustained revelation, for which I congratulate Dr. Ananta Giri for this significant contribution to world literature and an important milestone in existential spirituality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for very deep engagement. And really, you depicted the whole concern of his poetic insight, philosophical insight. So now I would like to invite Dr. Paul Haig. Paul Haig is very important seeker, very important reader, and he is nurturing an organization called Alliance for Mystical Pragmatists, which is a network of networking networks synergistically working for world peace by harmonizing evolutionary convergence. So, Paul Hage, you are cordially invited to share your thoughts and ideas about creation. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
I wasn't expecting to say something today.
Okay.
And I can just refer to what I wrote in the afterword. And Ananta called for a new sympathy of thinking. and starting from the alpha point of evolution. And that's really what I've been working with since I was, since 1980. So I don't have much more to say than what I wrote in my...
He's a great sociologist and eminent social thinker. So please, sir, share
I'm afraid I can't say much either, because I didn't know the existence of the book until yesterday. And of course, I haven't read it. Right. So I can't comment on the details, but we just had this wonderful, wonderful introduction to it by Dr. Vishwaneedam Singh Anand, which I think was wonderful. Not just survey of what's in it, but an appreciation of it. So I can't yet comment on the content until I've actually seen a copy of the book, which I hope I will soon. But I will just add say a couple of little things. I come from, I've lived in cultures, my family originated in Eastern Europe, where poetry is still a real tradition. Much of the English-speaking world, poetry is kind of not vanished, but it's become a kind of minor genre, maybe compared with other forms of literature. But in Eastern Europe, that's absolutely not true. It's flourished in many, many different ways. I mean, as you write, pure poetry is poetry of protest, it's taken many forms. And the other place, of course, where I lived a lot of my adult life has been Japan, where poetry, again, is a very, very, very live tradition. It's not at all uncommon for people to head off for a weekend. I must admit, they drink a little sake as well, but the purpose of their weekend retreat would be, in fact, to write poetry, to take maybe a retreat with friends to write haiku. So it's a pleasure to see this kind of tradition. I mean, of course, India has a magnificent poetic tradition, but it's interesting and wonderful to see Ananta carrying this forward, bringing it up to date. I mean, it seems to me that one of the many, many tragedies connected with Putin's activity in Ukraine today is that he's almost implicitly drawing Russian culture that's into a sort of rather negative light. Who wants to think about Russian culture? Russia itself, of course, has a magnificent tradition of poetry. And one of the great Russian poets, Pushkin, called poetry our lyrical wealth. I can't remember the exact translation. He talked somewhere about being a real and inexhaustible source of inspiration and being. And I think that's still a wonderful idea to keep in mind. So I want to congratulate Ananta. He seems to be evolving a little bit in the years I've known him, from being a sociologist to increasingly becoming a poet. So perhaps this is a trend which we will see accelerate in the coming years. So warm congratulations on the production of the book. I very much look forward to seeing it. And actually welcoming you up here to North India, I believe, a little later this month, where we can hopefully talk about it in person. So looking forward to seeing you in person, Ananta, in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Ranbir, one small request. We have a friend, a co-author, Elaine, who leaves shortly.
Yes,
so you can kindly invite Elaine. She just sent a message.
Yes, yes, Elaine, you are cordially invited, ma'am. Kindly unmute yourself. Yes, please share your thoughts.
I'm so honored to be here with such erudite and notable people, and I'm so appreciated the last speaker, Dr.
Janal Singh Ananda.
Yes. I'm looking back. And I had the privilege of seeing Ananta and going to his many seminars here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when he was here as a visiting scholar, speaker, lecturer at Harvard at the Divinity School. So I was able to participate in some of his very magnificent, extensive networks here in talking about his co-creation and co-realization ideas. And this idea that was mentioned earlier, his many ideas of co-creation, co-thinking, co-being, and not individual-centered around the ego. So I am just so glad to see him again and to be here in your presence and sharing like this, and hope he will come back. I'm so welcome to, he welcomed so many people in so many groupings here. They were all enlightened and inspired by his message that you've reiterated today and on this Zoom session. So
thank you, Helen. Thank you.
yes, you're very welcome. I hope you'll come back, and it's so nice to see you.
Love to mask and the family, please.
Now I would like, may I invite Pavitra Bhai? Pavitra Bhai, please share your thought. Pavitra Bhai, are you there? And if he is taking some time, may I invite Miniti Pradhan ji?
And all is there, no? You can invite them. I can just talk a little bit.
Okay. Sorry?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
I said Susri Opa is there. You can invite, or I can speak later, or else I can talk now.
Okay, you can talk now. She's taking some time.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Ananta Bhai, once again, congratulations. I mean, inviting me to speak about, after that many stalwart like Professor John Claymore and Professor Janal Singh Anand and Ananta Bhai, who is a mentor for me. It is, I feel it is a privilege, but still I have got a little bit of chance to tell him thanks. So that I would like to say. Actually, I write now 3-4 genres I am writing. And this spiritual genre is, I consider myself a newbie to this genre actually. And as I know Ananta Bhai for so many years, when I read his book and all this poetry, I did not find much difference, the way he speaks, everything and every word, and the way he has written. In fact, it is a bit difficult for me to understand everything very deeply the way others have understood. So I go back to the poetries again and again and read his interwoven words. What does it really mean? So that I did for 2-3 days. And I will just say a few features, what I learned from that. That is the thing is the poetries are very short in that short, within those short sentences and within those short lines, he has spoken a lot, which I still need to learn how it is. And every poetry he has dedicated to someone, some situation, and that gives a little bit better understanding, because many of them I know. So it gives the better understanding how it really he thinks. So 1 or 2 things, 2 poetries actually I liked it so much. That is one about that snake and Kundalini. He says, that he calls the snake, come and bite me and swirl around my neck. That that type of thinking actually takes you to that snake is not a very snake is to bite our ego. I mean, that is something it struck me so much. So I asked the snake to come and embrace me and bite my ego. So it is, and I observed his many poetries actually talk about the confluences of different ideas. How which one the general person will not think about. He has done that both opposite things, how it can go together, like the poetry in weapon and a flute, like how it can be interchanged and the meaning can be reinterpreted. So all these things I learned, and I think I'm very too ignorant to comment on all of this. So I'm thank you for this opportunity. And I think for that I will read little more to after listening to Professor Jannal Anand's review, I will even go into deeper and read it once again to do. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Now may I invite Dr. Khirod? Yes, Dr. Khirod, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Please share your thought and your reading.
Thank you so much, the organization. In fact, it's very difficult to, that's my first observation. It's very difficult to comment on Prof Ananta's work, especially a work which basically, combines both philosophy and, poetics or, poetry. I am basically an anthropologist teaching in University of Allahabad. Being an anthropologist, the first thing that came to my mind that I may not be able to actually, comment on this kind of, work where both philosophy and, poetry are, combined. But being an anthropologist, we have also other, kind of, dimensions, which actually gives us a certain kind of scope to actually, think and comment on this particular tradition of combining, philosophy and poetry. Let me first give a very small incident in my student life, which I can very well connect with what I'll be telling. When I was a student, I was a PhD student in IIT Delhi. We used to take tutorials for BTech students and some MTech students also. One of the MTech students once asked me, you are from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, but I have a question. Can you answer that? Then I told, okay, tell me, what is your question? He asked, your department is Humanities and Social Science, but why there are a lot of, politics in your department? Why there are a lot of conflicts, schisms, and rivalry in your department? Then I asked, doesn't your department have that kind of thing? If in your department, for that matter, any department have this kind of things, this kind of conflicts, rivalry among the colleagues, that's there. Then he asked me, but your department is Humanities department, Social Science department. You should teach us what is humanity. You should teach us what is, social science, what it is to be social. Then probably, though I kind of, I tried to answer something, but that actually stuck to me. I asked myself, we are basically claiming to be, working in Humanities and Social Science department, and you are professing humanity, you are professing things related to social science. But how far we are social? How far we are, practicing humanity? So in that context, I would say Prof Ananta Giri is a practicing social scientist. The way he talks, the way he behaves, the way he thinks, all are in congruity with each other. The complexity of the complex theoretical, matters that he has written, that is also expressed in his life. And that is how, if someone actually practices, then only he can write poems. Poems doesn't come, it's not a product of learning. If someone feels something, then only it comes out. So Prof Ananta Giri leaves his profession. He's an embodiment of what he wants to teach. So in that way, he is basically a practicing social scientist, I will say. And I have been, I'm not much work, but I have been familiar with many of his works, some poems also in Odia. But this work, I have not gone through the entire book, but in fact, he usually sent poems, and he has been sending to me through emails some of the poems. What I found is that in every poem you will find that there is a kind of intention to tell the society that let us coexist, let us coexist, let us co-think, and let us co-create. So that is how I think he has a vision of creating a new reality for us. Definitely, we all know that the society needs to be changed. We need a new world, a new reality. But being a social scientist, most of us are, I'll tell about myself, many of the times I feel hopeless. I go to self-analytical mode. What am I doing as an anthropologist, or for that matter, a social scientist? What am I doing as a social scientist? Till now, could I get to know some of the basic problems of our society? I found that most of the answers are no. In that way, he has actually visioned a way, a methodology to actually realize what he actually envisioned. I think his methodology is this: to co-think, to co-create, and that methodology is trying to live. And I think we are privileged. I am privileged to be a part, though I have not actually contributed my time and energy much to this, this great idea, but I'm really inspired, and definitely I congratulate him for this book, as well as I mean, this is something which actually we need, all of us we need. And this is what I feel, this is what it came from my, within about his journey as a poet, as well as a philosopher, as well as a social scientist. I congratulate him again, and I feel inspired to say that I'm with him. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. May I invite Dr. Gian Gului? He's a great speaker from Italy. Please share your thoughts.
Thank you very much. I hope I am audible. I wish to thank you very much for the invitation. I unfortunately cannot say very much because I received the book today, and I was impressed by a poetry, but I do not find it anymore. It is with yellow leaves and green leaves. Perhaps Ananta can help me, because I found it very impressive while reading. I would like to read it, whether if in case I have a time, because I think it is really very wise. And well, I was impressed while reading, and I sign it. It says, green leaves, yellow leaves, green leaves, yellow leaves, dance together in the gardens of life. When we become gray, green dances with joy. Let us dance with both yellow and green, love, care, tears, and smiles. It's very beautiful. I found it really a pearl in these, in all these compositions, which are very interesting. But of course, read every one of them would take us very, very much time. So I limit myself to signalize, to recommend the reading of this poem, for instance, because I found it very interesting for the life and for the evaluation of one's own life, and for in order to have a right, a wise attitude towards life and towards the different ages and periods of life. So I recommend this, in particular Green Leaves, Yellow Leaves, but of course on the owl, the reading of the owl book, because it can teach us really, it has been teaching since today morning very much to me, and I will of course enjoy meditating on the sense of the poetry and the beautiful also verses as such, and on the rhymes and so on. So I thank you very much for inviting me to the presentation of this book, and of course I would like to send my best congratulations to Ananta for the composition of this wonderful book, which has of course required many time and many of course engagement, a great engagement. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan Kuli. Now may I invite Dr. Payali C. Mukherjee, ma'am, to kindly share her view and her reading about creation.
Thank you, Randy, for this invitation. I have been privileged enough to go through this work right at this stage before it was being published. And I have read through his poems and have also put in an afterword for it, which basically goes around this theme of a poet and his philosophy to be very observant, very sensitive, and be very careful of what is happening around, and yet not be subsumed with the materiality of it or the worldliness of it, but understand it through a very, of the eyes of a philosopher and a poet. So the two concepts which I thought was very important that could characterize Professor Giri's work, or as I call him, Ananta Bhai's work, was the idea of yatra. Yatra is not really synonymous to journey. It's much more spiritual. It's much more integrated with one's soul searching for a kind of a destination. And also the idea of sankalpa, which is basically a sort of a determination to be on the journey. It's not really easy in the Hindu tradition. Before every puja, the yajman is asked to do sankalpa. So I find that as a poet, Professor Giri was actually rooted in this idea to understand that if I am taking up this job, if I'm taking up this work to understand the world through my words, and if I'm expressing myself through the different kinds of, interplay with words, feelings, emotions, I am going to do it in the right manner, with the right philosophy, with the right set of sort of perception and perspectives that might evolve from it. So my take on Alphabets of Creation is literally that it does move towards creation. It just moves towards a coexistence of dialogues. It just sort of entails this idea that it is possible to be observant. It is possible to be different. It is possible to have one's reflection, but it's also possible to co-nurture and co-share this earth and its differences with festivities, with cultures, with different human sort of relations and interrelations that we create and co-create. So in my view, as a young friend of Professor Giri, I must say my knowledge is very, very limited. But with that, whatever insight I could see in his sort of the the cluster of poems that he has brought in, this plethora that he has given us, has the element of a deep connection with oneself and a constant pursuit to reach out to the other. And with that, I would say that congratulations for this extremely complex and beautiful effort, if I may put it like that way. And I hope we get to meet soon and sort of see more of your creative works along with all the scholarly publications that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Payal. Now may I invite Susri Appa, Dr. Susri Sangeeta Mishra, to kindly share her.
Randirji, thanks for. Am I audible here?
You are audible, but we cannot see you.
Yeah. I think we have to choose between the audio and video because the connection is slightly weak. So let me finish my talking and then probably mute and then switch on the audio. Thank you so much. And to start with, this book of poem, to say the least, I feel is a gift not only to the readers, but also to the fellow poets, seekers, and dreamers. As we know, like dreamers are always isolated. Dreamers are considered to be, but here is our poet who actually has dared to dream together with the concept of coexistence, co-creation, co-creating, co-learning, So this is one of the key, element of the book that which I have not said. Of course, I have been privileged to read the book right from the conception and at the time of publishing, and have been privileged to write an afterword. But this is beyond all the points that I have written in the afterword, that this is personally, I feel, is a gift to the fellow poets and the fellow travelers. Second point that I would want to mention, that which actually Dr. Professor Janal Singh Anand very beautifully presented, that he leaves his body behind. Dr. Giri, as he writes, he leaves his body behind, and with every poem, every word is like transcended. So that's also very beautifully, this point is also very beautifully depicted in his, reflected in his poems, in his in Dr. Giri's words, where he's indeed transported to a different plane altogether, beyond the individual self, profession, and professional identity. In a poem that he writes, in a verse that he writes, I am not a scholar nor a reader. I do not want to be burdened by knowledge, but I love the knowledge of ultimate truth that you are in search of. I seek to dance with history and eternity, self, society, and beyond. So here is our poet professor who says, I am not a scholar, not. So, these are the, captivating lines. These are not only, again, I would refer back to Dr. Jalal Singh. These are the capsule words which, speaks beyond the line, which beyond the. Then the third point that I would just briefly mention, there are so many, but I don't know, Randirji, how much time I have. I have some 2-3 more points, but then I would probably.
Yes, you have 5 to 6 minutes.
Okay. So then the other experience is, I would say this in my own personal experience, that reading the book would be an experience of journey into self, a journey as mesmerizing as meditative, that takes the reader, the scholar, through many hues of his or her consciousness and introducing him or her to new dimension of thoughts and new expanse of imagination as well as realization. During this journey, one can experience, one can witness stillness in motion, silence in music, and answers in question. So this 3 points again, I thought is very. Then coming back to, I would also want to, just read out few more lines of Dr. Giri's, one of his poem, The Bird's Bards. I am a bard, a tree. My roots go deeper. My branches strive towards the sun. Birds blossom in my branches. Birds sing and dance. I live life in branching, opening my arms, embracing earth and ether, human and divine, and our fellow beings. I think this last line was like essence of the entire. In short, it has been both a pleasure, privilege, honor for me to have read the book and written the afterword for the book. So there are enough and more to say, but for now I think I would rest with this word.
Thank you, Susriyappa. May I invite Somjit Patravai to share his views and reading about. Somjit Bhai, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for giving me this chance to talk something about my very old friend, Professor Ananta Giri. Actually, some of our colleagues has already said that Ananta lives his life and Ananta lives in social science. Ananta practice social science. What I have learned from Ananta is that the core of our entire journey, Ananta always talks about journey, is love. Whenever I send a message to Ananta or Ananta sends a message to me, he writes love, Shomu. So this core value has made Ananta not simply a social scientist, a philosopher, social scientist. He is a creative person. He is a creative personality. I wish I have not read Ananta's book, but I have read some of his poems. These are not only embedded in our tradition. These are not only embedded in our feelings, but these show certain light in the age of darkness, in the age of hopelessness. I particularly congratulate Ananta for making this title. The title of the book has encouraged me to think, in a different manner, and think of life. Life is more than what is going on in our immediate vicinity, in our immediate life force. Thank you, Ananta. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Somjit Bhai. May I invite our respected friend, Bian Lee. Yes, Bian Lee. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello. Let me try to get my video working. Okay. Can everyone see me? Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, and Ananta, thank you so much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be here and listen to everyone's wonderful comments about your wonderful book. I had a chance to read the draft, and it seems very auspicious because I just landed in India. After 2 years away during the pandemic, back at home in California. I'm back. It's good to see Professor John Clammer. I remember the three of us, getting food in Chennai and hanging out, and that was a lot of fun. And so I want to congratulate my dear friend. I remember reading poetry together on the beach in Chennai. Last time I was there. And I think, my work is a bit different in that I'm a futurist, and I work a lot with emerging technology companies, with startups, with schools on how to prepare, the next generation of innovators and, in society in general for this rapidly changing and volatile future. And one thing that I always say is that, when we're preparing people for this next industrial revolution or the fourth industrial revolution or Web 3.0 or Industry 4.0, not enough has been done, and a lot of things get overlooked when we're talking about how to be. We talk about what we need to do for the future, but we don't necessarily think about how do we need to shift society and to shift ourselves. When we're exploring an industrial revolution, we need an existential revolution, a cognitive revolution, and an existential revolution to create a better society and a better humanity. And that's where I really align with what Ananta has really talked about in this book. And I was honored to write an afterword for this book, as well as the one on, corporate responsibilization. And they all tie in together to this theme of in this rapidly changing future with so many pressing global challenges. I do a lot of work on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals with emerging technologies and how do you apply, artificial intelligence to solving SDGs. And and now with, Facebook and Meta and all of that, we're talking about the metaverse. And we need more conversations around what actually is the purpose of this technology, and is it evolving so much quicker than humanity is evolving? And these are really critical concepts, because if humanity is not evolved and consciousness has not evolved to a place where we are able to manage the technology for a higher purpose rather than for bad things, which is what we're seeing happen. It's being exploited and corrupted. Then how do we actually take charge of our future for the better and make it an inclusive, responsible and sustainable future for all? And so there are a lot of important themes, and it goes back to, this very much this theme of understanding and getting back into ourselves. And someone said that earlier about really when we want to explore the world, we need to explore ourselves, right? Everyone wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. And it's really that's the center of the core of the conversation of not just what we want to be as a society, but who we want to be. And I work with a lot of, schools and universities, and preparing young people for the future and future skills building. And I always say that, it's not about asking anymore, what do you want to be when you grow up? We need to evolve to a point where we're actually asking, how do you want to be when you grow up, right? Because none of the tedium of what we're doing to the planet will matter if we no longer are able to, if humanity is no longer able to support it in what we're doing. And those are critical things that the school curriculum misses. And we are evolving from, this go from fear to abundance, right? And how we approach the world. and understanding the interconnectedness of everything, you know, and moving from even building resilience to being a regenerative society starts with being regenerative humanity. And so I was very, and one way to do that is to really explore deeper within ourselves. And that's where the philosophy comes in. And poetry has a way of really igniting that spark of thinking and creativity beyond prose, beyond a very, you know, practical way of thinking, into going and almost igniting and challenging us to align with our higher selves. You know, poetry is a way to align with our higher selves in language, in the language and the colorfulness of Ananta's writing. And ultimately, when we're in search of God, or with all religions, ultimately it's a search within ourselves. You know, we are made in God's image, and that is in so many cultures and so many religions go back to the fact that whether you want to call it God, cosmic consciousness, the divine matrix, everything, we are the universe experiencing itself, and we are all mirrors of each other, and we are all ripples. You know, when you throw a rock in a pool, right, the ripples all bounce and interact with each other, and that similarly is what we're doing with ourselves into this collective consciousness. And we need to evolve that into that higher consciousness in order to be able to take humanity forward to a better place. And so these themes are very important. And I want to congratulate Dr. Ananta for really trying to elevate the discourse and to present this discussion and share this discussion with more people through his book. It's very important. We're at this very critical juncture. And I sort of straddle between both worlds of the philosophical and very much the pragmatic left brain, technological. But ultimately it's, you need both. And we need more poetry and technology to bring more humanity back. And I do a series of presentations on really bridging technology plus humanity, and that's actually where we need to go in the future. And books like these and writings like these help us aspire to get more in touch with our higher selves of who we are, and remembering who we are apart from all the noise, apart from all of this, mirage of society and the mask that we wear every day. And so it's a very touching book on so many of these types of themes. And so I'm very honored to been able to contribute afterward to that. And I look forward to reading the hard copy. And I look forward to coming to Chennai and seeing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bayan Leeji. May I invite respected and honorable Dr. Dilip Saji to kindly share his thought.
Are you able to listen to me, please?
Yes, sir. You are loud and clear.
Very fine, very fine. See, first of all, I would like to talk about Dr. Ananta Giri, whom I know since more than 3 decades with some gaps. But he is the person who has always inspired me to do a lot of work and active work. I have seen him from different dimensions in my life. And although poetry is not my area, but of course I know a little bit about spirituality. And then what I'm trying to say, that he's following Aurobindo in the expression of philosophy and spirituality, which is probably one of the rarest way of presentation of spirituality in these days today. I also would like to state something about which I know a little bit, and that is on we were working on Aurobindo and Gandhi, he had brought out such an excellent document. In these days, both the way, to talk about Aurobindo and Gandhi in simultaneous manner is very, very difficult and very, very risky. And in that area, he did a very, very excellent job. And it is a very remarkable. In fact, once I was discouraged myself that should I work on Gandhi and Aurobindo or not. But then I have now gathered the courage. Of course, I may not be able to go to that level, but I continued my study. And that is a very important thing, important point of contribution of his scholarship in my life right now. Thank you very much and congratulations, Doctor. Thank you.
You are muted, Randhir.
Thank you, Dilip Saji, for your encouraging word. May I invite Dr. Maruf Bhai to share your thoughts? Dr. Maruf, I think he does not need any introduction. He is our co-nurturer of Vishwaneedam Center. He always helps us with his deep, insightful philosophical engagement. So, Dr. Maruf Bhai, are you there? He's taking some time. Maruf Bhai, he's taking some time. Maybe we can see co-presence of Tattva Mansi, Dr. Tattva Mansi ma'am. She's a great anthropologist. She teaches in Odisha. Ma'am, are you there?
Yeah. Thank you for calling me. It is very unexpected that I am being called. And I am from Odisha. In fact, I congratulate Professor Giri for this wonderful work, Alphabets of Creation. And I think I didn't get the opportunity to read the entire book, but I am sure it is very, very interesting. But I will definitely read it. And what I gathered from the entire conversations, and I just glanced through the book, that these alphabets exist amidst huge contradictions, and every contradiction we confront in our daily life, our experience, our whatever predictions, experience, emotions, everything, we have a lot of contradictions, and these alphabets also exist in such a contradictory manner. When I was reading this initial pages of the book, I could see that A for something like Om, and then B for beginning, and then C for creation, something like that. And then there is a series of contradictions of the same words. So in our daily lives, in our entire lifespan, and whether it is a very short-term contextualization or even for a long-term planning, we come across a huge number of context and contradictions, and we confront with these kind of contradictions. And Professor Giri's work, I think, mostly is on coexistence and co-creativity and cohabitation and co-realization. And so I think he believes in a very expansive world, and he doesn't believe in any kind of confinement or any kind of limitations in the journey of life. And I wish all the best, because I think the journey of life can open up at any point of time, and it can carry on with a lot of creativities and a lot of expectations. And his book will be a wonderful piece of poetries, and I think those who love poetry will definitely enjoy reading this book, and I will definitely read this book. And I am sure that I will enjoy this, and I'm sure others also will enjoy So my best wishes to Professor Giri and others who are helping in the organization of these events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. May I invite Sintu? Sintu, bhai. Friends who co-present here would like to share some thoughts about this book called Alphabets of Creation.
I would like to rather tell that Professor Vinod Balakrishnan is here. Probably Ananta sir, I think it's right that Vinod sir talks first and I'll come after him.
Yes, respected Vinod sir, you are cordially invited to share some of your thoughts.
Vinod Balakrishnan from NIT Trichy.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Shintu. Thank you, the coordinator, and thank you, Professor Ananta. It's a great honor to be among people who share a common sentiment, and that sentiment is to see to what extent we can carry on living with understanding, with a lot of compassion, and also without losing enthusiasm, continue to seek. And I thought one hallmark of Professor Ananta Giri is that he is not just an intellectual. You know, it is one of the many dimensions that Professor Ananta Giri has got. And because he does not assert any one dimension and he freely lives all these dimensions, everybody has a slight problem about understanding Professor Giri. But I thought, like the great philosophers, the really genuine teachers, he is basically a traveler. I thought that metaphor fits Professor Giri so well. He likes to travel, which is moving from where we are located to where others are located. Now, that is exactly the metaphor with which I would like to describe Professor Giri. He is a person who is not fixed in one location or on his own location. He is, before he would want to talk about his location, he would like to see where everybody else is located. So that capacity to accommodate others. And when he does that, I thought he is capable of phenomenal reserves of patience and silence. You know, he goes silent when he is with others. Now, this is very different from a typical intellectual. A typical intellectual is one who would not want others to even assert their position because he thinks he has a more important idea to present. Now, Professor Giri has some wonderful ideas. We can when we start talking about it, then we may have to start talking about the best ideas in Western philosophy, the best ideas in Eastern philosophy, and the best seekings which we would have in literature, in poetry, in painting, in traditional indigenous practices, in practices of communities. So we will have to simply move on like that. So he has his own wonderful ideas to share, but he is not like the typical intellectual. He has phenomenal reserves of silence. He likes to listen because his world is built around what everybody has to say. And that patience to see what others have to say how others are seeing, and with the hope that there might be somebody's way of seeing which he would want to follow himself. And he is not ashamed, or he doesn't feel belittled when he is in the presence of such a person. And age does not matter for Professor Giri. It can be a child, it can even be a living tree, it can also be a very sage, learned person. So that is a capacity for understanding which is more than merely an intellectual drive or a desire. And I thought that is what Professor Giri tries to give a tongue to. You know, in his essays, he tries to see. Let us say he talks about habitat. Habitat is a place where we dwell. But then he is not talking about a specific dwelling. He is talking about a quality of dwelling where more and more people can dwell together. So then let us say he talks about compassion. He is not talking about a love of one person for another, one thing for another, but a state of being where more and more beings can come together and enjoy by exercising their idea of love. So it is like a stitching together of many sensibilities, of many consciousnesses. So there is a phenomenological attitude to his seeking, but there is also the sage's patience to listen. And I have not seen many people who can demonstrate so much silence. Now, then there is one more aspect which I would want to say. I don't know how well that idea will come out, but let me say it. Now, I said, you know, he has many dimensions, which means that he writes philosophical essays. He writes essays which tend towards a philosophy. He writes poems. He writes short pieces. Then he writes travel accounts. Then he writes letters. So, it is not that the Ananta Giri is the one who writes philosophical essays, or the Ananta Giri is the one who writes poems. It is the same Ananta Giri who pervades his essays, his poems, his short notes, his letters. So it is not as if he is wearing a different hat. So there is a fundamental spirit which is indwelling in whatever he does. But because there are times when he, like any artist who is conscious of the role he is playing, he sometimes gets into a very serious mode. That is because he thinks that without that, others won't understand him as an intellectual. So for the sake of others, he sometimes dons a very intellectual role, and then he writes those very formal intellectual pieces, his researched pieces. But the typical Ananta Giri is that free spirit, because you can see in most of his writings, even his prose writings are in the manner of his poems. He just lets himself be, and it's for others to see what he is doing. So reading Giri is not to read his metaphors and read his rhythms and read the beauty of his poems. Reading Ananta Giri is dwelling in a spirit. I thought we need to understand that part. That spirit doesn't make any distinctions. It can actually be very frustrating to people who work in camps. You know, when you are in one camp or another camp and your language and worldview are shaped by that camp, then you will feel very frustrated when you are confronting a free spirit like Ananta Giri. Ananta Giri crosses borders. Ananta Giri crosses language. Ananta Giri crosses categories. So and through that is his argument. His argument is, you have come into the world. There is a purpose, but you are not always very clear about your purpose. And your purpose is not going to be complete by your seeking alone. You would need to have others traveling with you, journeying with you. You would need to listen to others. So that kind of a free-floating spirit is what we need to understand. And if we can catch that, then we will get to the greater beauty of Ananta Giri's work. He is creating the condition for everybody, of course, through his language, to be able to see that spirit and like him, see if we can also travel, become travelers, move from our location to where others are located. So much thank you for the opportunity. I have been rambling. I thought I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinod, sir. Very beautifully you articulated what Ananta Giri is and what does Ananta Giri's writing mean. So now may I invite Sintuji to kindly share.
Yes, yes. So Ananta sir, and in fact, Professor Vinod Balakrishnan has rightly put the exact terms that suits Professor Ananta Giri. So Ananta sir has been a seeker, a free spirit and a free traveler. And just like Vinod sir said, I would like to add a word where he is a great learner and a seeker. An absolutely great learner who is willing to take ideas from anybody, for that matter. He's not only willing to listen to a child and a professor in a similar manner, he's also willing to take ideas and concepts from anybody, being a seeker, free seeker in that sense. And you can see him taking notes even now. So that is the kind of man where he keeps learning from every person he meets, every book that he skims through. So, and when I went, skimmed through some of the pages of the poetry collection, and I was not surprised to see those terms of co-realization, and his seeking was visible in those lines as well, where he talks about the trust that he has in every mutual trust he builds among people whom he meets. And I think all of us who have seen him must have experienced the same trust that he entrusts in anybody whom he meets. And the vibrant colors of consciousness that he talks about while he is in search for the ultimate truth. And the possibility of dancing with the truth is probably something we have not thought about. Being able to be somebody who is a seeker, who is an academician, but also somebody who is a free spirit, who can take life as it comes and let people in with so much confidence and trust. And the kind of where you can actually seek with spirituality, with philosophy, and with trying to realize or finding vibrant, different colors of truth and consciousness. And he is the best person to talk about culture, obviously, co-realizations that he has had through his travels, through meeting people all around the world. He is somebody who can talk about culture and how culture is not a static entity where you talk about a singular perspective of the same. He talks about the multiple perspectives of the same as well. And I would like to send all my wishes and congratulations to dear Ananta sir for the publication of your new collection of poems. And it has been a pleasure to be a part of this book launch as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sentuji. So, any friends who are present here would like to share anything about Professor Ananta or his book called Alphabets of Creation?
Randhirji, I wish to say something.
Yes, I was supposed to invite you. Yes, Dr. Tiwari.
Okay, thank you so much. Although I haven't received the copy of the anthology, but out of this book launch festival, I must say, the deliberations made by the eminent scholars, starting from Jarnail Singh Anand sir, he made a nutshell depiction of all the important poems which are there in the collection of this Alphabet of Creation. And out of the deliberations made by several distinguished scholars, I have few observations, particularly when Professor Vinod Bala Krishna sir were making his presenting his observations, and while saying that Professor Ananta Giri writes on different field, different genre, and where on those different topics, whenever he writes, it seems that he is made for the same. So I would like to compare him with a critical term. That critical terms is very appropriate on the writings of Professor Giri, that quality of negative capability. That quality of negative capability was propounded by John Keats, the one of the younger romantics. And when he says the poets of my generation are lacking negative capability, while Shakespeare and other writers, they have that capacity to go deep into the character, negating their own personality. So same kind of attitude and temperament is there in the personality of Professor Giri, and I must appreciate and congratulate for this seminal publication. And one more compliment I would like to give here. One line was given by T.V. Shelley. He says, poets are unacknowledged legislators of society. So of course, Professor Giri is an unacknowledged legislator of society through his writing and his presentation of his concept of coexistence, co-creation, co-learning. He keeps awareing the people, keeps acknowledging the people of the society, be it from the field of academia, be it the field of normal life. So definitely, sir is a real leader. And of course, the book like this Alphabet of Creation and then other books published by sir is a source of motivation for us. And I wish a great success on this launching ceremony of this anthology. And congratulations to Professor Ananta Giri. Thank you so much, Randhirji, for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tiwari. Any other friends? Krishna Gopalji, Santosh Mishra Bhai. Punya Sloka. Any other friend? Would you like to respond to some of your
also invite Sandhya Appa and Sandeep Kaur is present and Rasmi Bhai. Rasmi,
Hello, Bhai. Sorupa is there.
Also Sorupa. Sorupa will sing a song.
Yes, Ji, we will invite you at the end of the session to sing a song.
Okay.
Okay. Should I share something?
Yes, please.
I think everybody talked well about Professor Giri and his writing. I'm so honored and privileged that I have association with Professor Ananta Giri. And
Nanti चौपड़ी बाहर पड़ी अनंत गिरी ने एक बुक
I'm inspired by him because there are something which is very, very important for learning, writing, and thinking for society. That is very central to the self of Professor Giri. That is humility, tolerance, and acceptance. He has deep sense of epistemological trust. You know, and if you can read this poem, he dedicated alphabets of creation to Manoj Das. And I can recall when Manoj Das passed away, he was very disturbed, and we can recall his conversation. And today I can recall that conversation. You know, what intellectual can give to the society? This is a journey. Journey means critical engagement for transformation society. And you will find a new epistemology of truth in his reading, writing, and reflexivity. And you know, he is a sadhak. And until unless you have tapasya, until unless you engaged with tapasya, sadhana cannot be fulfilled. What we are witnessing in India? People are ready to become expert of knowledge. They can't have a kind of respect for activist knowledge. And I think without activism, transformation of society cannot be achieved. So I think Professor Giri is an embodiment of both activist knowledge and expert knowledge. The kind of praxeology you will find in him is very rare, because when you become a scientist, social scientist, you have a limitation. You cannot say many things which can be said by poetry. I think Professor Chittaranjan Das, he is alive because Professor Giri is alive. Professor Giri is there. And I think when you meet Professor Giri, you will find how to be a seeker. When you think like you are a sociologist or you are a social scientist, you himself create a kind of limitation to find truth. When you meet Ananta Bhai, he does not like to call himself as a professor. He call me Ananta Bhai. That is the humility. And you will find this kind of reflexivity in everywhere, in every social scientist who are transformative, like Gandhi. Another very important thing you will find, a kind of free flow. Professor Giri is like a free floating intelligence here. Submission of any ideology is anti-critical act. And it is very difficult to not to submissive any ideology. When you open to question, when you are in true sense, if you are a seeker, then only you can find that path of seeking truth. And that is a kind of, you can see, Professor Giri learns everything from everywhere. Living, non-living, child, woman, girl. Whenever he talks, you know, he's a kind of reference personality for us. What kind of reflexivity, you know, we need to have in a society? Because talking about harmonious society is easy, but making harmonious society is very difficult. So I think in that spirit we can think about, because I'm a sociologist, and so I can you know, draw a kind of context of his writing. His writing is a kind of process. He's a sadhak. He does tapasya every day, every time. That is why his knowledge is very, very deep and touching. I can see some of his poetry. He dedicated, I think, 3 lines he wrote about Lord Krishna, why he danced in Vrindavan, danced in Kashmir, and he dedicated that poetry to Maruf Bhai, who lives in Kashmir. Because Kashmir is suffering, just think about these words of poetry. It helps us to be more optimistic. So that is a kind of epistemology we can learn from Professor Ananta Giri and his writings. There are 2 sorts of writings. One writing written in. One writing written, and it becomes a kind of transformative idea which will become alive. That sort of writing, if you want to write, you need to do tapasya. So I congratulate again Professor Giri for giving me a chance to speak, although we have very limited time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ranveer and friends. Very quickly, maybe a few minutes, we can listen to Sandeep and Sandeep Kaurji, Rashmi Bhai, and then Sopa can present here. Sandeep Kaurji is here, and also Ashish Anja, if you can kind 1 minute each. Yes. Ashish Anja.
He's taking some time. So, Rup Bhai,
and
not there. I think we can invite Sarupa.
Okay.
Yes, Sarupa Appa to sing song. Yes,
Okay.
Sarupa.
Hello.
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Little Before that, I want to say something. Please, can I continue? Hello.
Yes, you are audible, please.
Good evening, Anand Bhai, and all honorable guests. Today is very special day. First of all, it is a Mother's Day, which is in our core of heart. And next special day, which is now continuing. It is a memorable occasion for all of us, those who love with respect Anand Bhai. This new book of poem, Taking God to be Bed, is definitely a milestone in his creativity. With all the alphabets of a poetic personality, in his poems, nature, divine, and man, as well as depth of his spiritual seeking, are reflected most of his beautiful poems. I'm going to quote some of lines from his poems. Divine Mother, a golden breeze, which touched me. Quote, Divine Mother, a golden breeze. O Divine Mother, I see you in clouds, a ray of light, a golden breeze to all our crying hearts, aspiring souls, co-lovers in an alchemy of transformation. Unquote. Most of his poems fill our hearts with joy, laughter, and good feelings. Unfortunately, I could not read all his poems, but I heard from Susri ma'am, and it was very beautiful and very touching. In my point of view, in some of his modern poetry, we can feel a flavor of spirituality. In his spiritual poems, also ingredients of modernity are vibrant. I really enjoyed. I pray to the Divine Mother to make his pen a perennial river of Ganga, to create more such beautiful poems for all of us, those who love poetry, literature, and spirituality. In the constellation, I congratulate to Anand Bhai again, once again, and thank you, Anand Bhai, and all of you for this opportunity.
Please sing a song for us.
Can I sing some special Mother's Day special?
Sure, sure.
Allow me for 1 minute. तो कितने अच्छे हैं, तो कितने भोले हैं, प्यारी प्यारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, तो कितने अच्छे हैं, तो कितने भोले हैं, प्यारी प्यारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ये जो दुनिया है ये वन है कांटों का, तू फुलवारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ। दुखन लागी है माँ तेरी अखियाँ, दुखन लागी है माँ तेरी अखियाँ। मेरे लिए जागी है तो, मेरे लिए जागी है तो सारी सारी रतिया मेरी निंदिया पे, अपनी निंदिया भी तूने बारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ। तू कितनी अच्छी है, तू कितनी भोली है, प्यारी प्यारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ। अपना नहीं तुझे सुख दुख कोई, अपना नहीं तुझे सुख दुख कोई। मैं मुस्काया तो मुस्काए, मैं मुस्काया तो मुस्काए, मैं रोया तो रोई मेरे हंसने पे, मेरे रोने पे तू बलिहारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ। तू कितनी अच्छी है, तू कितनी भोली है, प्यारी प्यारी है। ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ, ओ माँ। माँ बच्चों की जान होते हैं, माँ बच्चों की जान होते हैं, वो होते हैं किस्मत वाले, वो होते हैं किस्मत वाले जिनकी माँ कितनी शीतल है, न्यारी न्यारी है। Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Swarupa ji. And very heart-touching, because when you sing this song, I request all of our participants or viewers, you can remember your mother, but also remember Mother Earth. Mm. Always interesting to remember history and the activism in our previous era. You know, Mother's Day origins lie in a very feminist campaigns in the late 15th and early 20th century to promote peace and greater recognition of women's social and economic contribution as a mother. Divine, you know. So our nature is a mother. So thank you so much for giving this tribute to Mother's Day. So may I invite respected and Honorable Professor Giri to share his thoughts about all these concerns and views. Yes.
So thank you, Randeep, and all friends co-present with my heart and our hearts together. And it is a joy to be together this evening and really work, meditate, and dance with alphabets of creation. I'm grateful to each one of you, dear and kind soul, for your co-presence, and many of our friends, Paul and Bianli and Susriyata and Maruf Bhai, they also have enriched our conversation with their very deep reflections. So poetry is a way of being together, but the afterword has constituted a humble tapestry of thinking and being. And I'm very grateful to all friends who have really stitched these garlands of thinking, imagination, and experience together. For example, in her afterword, Mampela, yes. So in her afterword, Mampela is speaking about monastery. And Mampela Ramphele, who's a very inspiring activist thinker, and we may remember that she was part of the Black consciousness movement, along with Steve Biko as a young student, a medical student, which really contributed to unsettling the apartheid regime. So Mampela is referring to the work of the poetry, spirituality of Thomas Merton, and where to live in a monastic way. And how do we really, where is our monastery? Our monastery is wherever we are. As Sri Aurobindo is saying, all life is yoga. And it is in that same spirit we can realize all life is poetry. And the connection between poetry and history is very interesting. Martin Heidegger, the great philosopher, with his limitation like all of us, for example, his philosophy and poetry could not really feel the pain and suffering of the persecuted. But despite that, Heidegger is speaking that poetry is the foundation of history. And Randir was very kindly referring to Professor Manoj Das. And as a preparation, I was just reading one of his very deeply touching essay called Poetry and History. And let me come. The Poetry of History. And Professor Manoj Das is writing at the end of his essay, which was first published in the Hindu. He's writing, the utter futility of achievements without an aspiration for a growth in consciousness had never been stretched so briefly yet so tellingly. So therefore, the challenge before us, as Bianli was also challenging us to realize, the disjunction between technology and our poetic imagination, consciousness, and quality of our being and interbeing. So Professor Das, building on Sri Aurobindo and many seekers, is challenging us that to realize the futility of achievements without an aspiration for a growth in consciousness. So the challenge before us is a growth in consciousness, and that growth is our quality, our width, our breadth, and it is here that the poetic becomes a companion for transformation. So many of our friends have really brought to us the significance of spirit, free spirit. And I was reading these lines from Khalil Gibran, again a perennial spirit with us. He is writing in the prophet, "You have walked among us a spirit, and your shadow has been a light upon our faces. Much have we loved you, but speechless was our love, and with veils has it been veiled. Yet now it cries aloud unto you and would stand revealed before you. And ever has it been that love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation." So therefore, the journey of spirit, free spirit, in poetry, in life, with all our constraints, many imprisonment, but still we strive to become free. But who are we to make ourselves free? Or those of us who are in prison, who are we to make ourselves free? And here I was just thinking about this poem about Lula, you know, our President Lula, and in Brazil. And he really came from a very difficult circumstance. But with his sadhana, his striving, he really changed the terms of life, not only discourse for many people. And I have met people who knew Lula, and I was in Brazil in 2018, and I was part of the Free Lula campaign in front of the prison in this city called Curitiba in Brazil. And for example, this poem, "Who are you to free Lula? Who are you to free Lula? Lula is ever free. Who is Lula? Lula is part of our soul, fighting for beauty, dialogue, and dignity for all. Nobody can jail Lula. Lula is free, free spirit, freedom eternal, spirit eternal." So the spirit, body, world, they are a very complex web of reality. As Sindhu very kindly mentioned, the reality of complexity at the same time beauty. And Vinod also very kindly mentioned that the task in this context, that how do we open ourselves to the world, the whole festival of listening. So all dear friends, our friend Somyajit, Tatvamasi, and Gyan Luigi, and Sushriyapa, Minati, Swarupa, and I seek your, and also Dilip, and all friends, those who have, and Professor John Clemmer, and Professor Jainal Singh Anand. So really, you have helped us to be part of our continued journey. So my gratitude to all of you. Let us hold our hands together and continue our never-ending journey.
Thank you.
Yes. So thank you, dear and respected friend. Yes. So thank you so much for your kind support and for your presence here. So we will invite you again next Sunday. Every Sunday we organize some sort of conversation, dialogue to understand things deeply. Thank you so much for your kind support. So namaste, Khuda Hafiz, Shukriya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you, Minty ji. Thank you so much.